episode of the Business of Business podcast. I'm your host, Roy. Of course, we are the podcast that brings you a wide range of guests that talk about a lot of diverse topics. We want to maybe bring something to your attention you hadn't thought about, or we actually want to provide resources in case there's something that's keeping you up at night. We have a mix of good professionals in the industry, and today is no different. We've been waiting quite a while, but we're glad to have Danna Olivo on. She is with MarketAtomy, and she is a growth strategist and CEO of MarketAtomy. Her passion is working with small, first-stage entrepreneurs to ensure that they start out on the right foot and stay on the path to financial freedom. Known as the business birthing specialist, Danna understands the intricacies involved in starting and running a successful business. Danna, thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us. We certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you, Roy. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and first off, I want to get, before we jump too far in, I want to get a little bit of your background. If you could tell us, what has kind of led you to this point and kind of what you've got going on.
Well, my background is primarily in marketing and business development, and I started for the first probably 30 years of my career in the architectural engineering construction market.
Oh, wow.
Primarily doing marketing and business development for them. Okay. In 2009, I was laid off of from one of the largest construction management companies. And from there, took myself internationally into Brazil, basically creating inroads for companies here that were closing their doors because of the recession, and companies in Brazil. Okay. And upon returning from that, about 4 years later, is where MarketAtomy was, the concept of MarketAtomy was developed and birthed.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the MarketAtomy.Academy, which I think I'll let you explain it more in detail. But I think with the pandemic and everything, kind of saw some of that in-person business go away, and trying to figure out a way to make this financially feasible for micro businesses and solopreneurs to actually get some of the help that they need, which I think is awesome because one thing what I found is that this pandemic has forced people, while it's closed a lot of businesses, it's forced a lot of people into business that never really set out to be an entrepreneur. So while I may be an awesome plumber or an awesome CPA, now that I've got 3 people working for me, it's like, oh my gosh, now what? So I think that's awesome. But before we get even too far into that, I wanted to let you tell us about your assessment tool. That would kind of be the beginning, is that I think this assessment tool can help identify some issues with businesses. So I'll let you tell us about that.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, Roy. The assessment tool that will be beta launched at the beginning of August is a standalone assessment platform for existing small businesses. Generally, they're about a year or more in existence, making some kind of revenue. But what's happened is they've reached a ceiling to where they're having trouble growing and breaking through that ceiling. The assessment came about because working with my clients on a one-on-one basis, I was spending on average about 4 hours in the very beginning asking a series of questions, because as a strategist, I needed to understand where they were at that point in time.
Right.
And part of my job is to find out where those gaps are in the company. So in an effort to streamline this process, is where I started to put it online to make it, something that they could take before I even really met with them.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, it's morphed into a standalone platform.
Oh, nice.
And what it does is it assesses existing companies across 20 different key performance indices. KPIs, in other words, okay? And these 20 different KPIs are boiled down into 5 critical areas. One is operational strength. What is the financial strength? What is the sales and marketing strength of the company? What is the product and service viability ratio, and also the overall health of the organization and their management team. So individuals, companies that take this assessment will get scored in those 5 areas. But by examining the responses to all 20 of the KPIs, I can go in and pretty much give you an idea of where the gaps are in the company, because they're all interdependent. All the KPIs are all interdependent. And so we can pretty much detect where those gaps are and where things are dropping off. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because to me, there's a lot of information that's out there online, but unless we stop and make a true assessment, and I mean an honest assessment of where we
yes.
are right this moment, not where we think we should be, not where we hope to be, but what is our state now? Because
Right.
I use the example like, I want to take a trip to Chicago, so I want to go out the door and turn to the west. But, if I'm starting in Las Vegas, not going to make it. So, we have to know where we are at this moment before we can start that growth pattern and try to figure out, what's holding us back. So I think
No,
that,
you're absolutely
yeah,
right. This assessment, like I said, I've had where clients will come to me and they'll say, "Look, I'm having trouble meeting my growth goals, my revenue goals. We need to have an overhaul on the sales department. We need to understand what's going on." And the first thing I will do is I'll ask them, "Are you sure it's your sales department?" Because you can't put all the blame on the sales, because sales relies on pricing. It relies on your messaging out in the market. It relies on a viable product or service. So if you're not exploring all of those areas as to why your sales are not increasing,
yeah,
you're doing your company injustice. You're
yeah,
doing yourself injustice.
yeah. Yeah, and I think with smaller companies it's much easier. But if you have two people in the marketing and sales function, I think this amplifies that message that you're saying is that we have to have communications, because I'm doing an awesome job marketing, and we're getting all these leads that are coming in, and I'm smiling every day, happy because I'm really knocking it out of the park. The problem is if those aren't suitable customers for our product. And I kind of like to use an extreme. We'll just say that it's an adult beverage that you have to be 21 to drink. So if I've got 10 and 12-year-olds responding to my ads, those aren't even my customers. We couldn't sell it to them if we wanted to. And so again, that's an extreme case, but we have to look at it in our business. If we're generating a lot of traffic that don't have the funds,
Qualified.
don't need the money, qualified prospects, it's not doing us any good. So that's why I just can't stress enough that communication between who's doing your marketing and who's doing your sales, because one of them can flourish and it really not be helping the other.
Right. And if you are not, if that's not your forte, say marketing or sales or something like that, if your forte or your strength is in product development or in manufacturing, you need to stick with what you are strong in.
Right.
Okay. And don't try and do everything in order to save money, because what happens is you end up spending more money than you do saving money. Nowadays with the gig economy, you can farm a lot of this stuff out for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, that's a great message too, because sometimes when we morph into that, there can be a lot of reasons we think people won't do it as good as we can't afford it. But like you said, if you're a good salesman, stick to sales and then find somebody to do your books, because you're going to end up paying more money at the end of the year than if you had a professional, somebody that knows that, taking care of it for you. So and so what are some other things that you're that you've been identifying through talking with small businesses? And I guess, talking about the Academy, let's talk about the beginning of that for just a minute. I think you used to do a lot more in-person, up close and personal work, and then the pandemic set in.
And that's right. When I got back from Brazil, the reason the MarketAtomy.Academy, it was a rebranding of the company that I went into Brazil with, okay? And what had happened when I got back from Brazil, I had been in a very bad accident in Brazil. I was hit by a bus crossing the street.
Oh, wow.
So therefore, there was about 8 years to 12 8 to 12 months there that I was going through surgeries and things. And what happened when I finally got back to the United States is a lot of companies within the industry I was in, which is the architectural engineering construction industry, a lot of companies that had been forced to start their own organizations because they couldn't find work were coming to me and saying, Danna, I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. I'm bleeding money. I've been trying to, make ends meet. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. And in the process of trying to explain to them the infrastructure of a successful business is where I realized they had a good product or service offering, but didn't know how to build a business around it.
Right.
Okay. And so for that reason, in order to explain to them when they didn't have that business knowledge, they didn't have the marketing knowledge or anything like that, I came up with what's called the MarketAtomy concept. And it's the marketing anatomy. And MarketAtomy concept is built around the human body. That's where the anatomy comes in. Okay. What I showed them through the human body is you look at the heart of the human body, and the heart is your why, it's your passion. But up in your brain is your playbook. That's where all your education, where your product and service offerings are, your processes, your systems, everything is up in the brain. Now, when you think about it, can the heart operate without the brain in the human body? No. It's the same way in business. You need both the brain and the heart operating simultaneously to push your marketing message out through the veins of the body, which are your marketing channels, to your market, which is the body. And if you take it one step further, there's also the soul of the business. That's you. You as the business owner, it's your culture that drives the business. And so by doing that, I was able to show them that all of that needed to be in place for them to bring customers through the door. Because without that, you have no customers, and without no customers, there is no business.
Right.
I think that's where MarketAtomy came about.
Okay. Yeah, I think you make an important part about this is that a lot of times we see people get into business because they think there's a lot of money in that space, and that may be true. But I think, to have a truly sustainable business that you can be happy in for a long time, you really have to get your heart into it. You have to have something that you'd wake up every day for, whether you're getting paid or not. For me, I've been fortunate enough to have that my whole life, and the money is just a bonus, but getting up and doing that mission, it's so important.
Well, and as I tell my clients, there's two different whys. You've got two whys for doing what you do. One is the professional why. Why do you do what you do for your client? What motivates you to do, your business? But there's also that personal why. And that personal why is just as important, because that is the why that motivates you to get over those hurdles, to break through those ceilings, those hard times. And those personal whys can be, I advise them to make short-term and long-term whys. Okay. For instance, my why is ultimately, I want to be able to buy a large piece of land and build several homes on it so that all my kids and my husband and I can be on the same piece of land, and almost like a commune type thing.
Right. Yeah. And I think maybe this message is more for people thinking about getting business, or maybe even for those that are very young in it, is that it's tough. And, I think, I did this. It's exciting. It's fun. All of those are great reasons, but, you have to really have your heart in it, because there are days when you wake up, or, there's some struggles that you may have going through this, that you have to have that in order to go on. I had in an interview one day, we started talking about how many times people want to quit in business. And she says, have you ever wanted to quit? And I said, yeah, probably 3 times this morning. So, you have to really, you have to have that, like, nothing's going to stop me. I'm pushing through this. And, you know, one of my favorite little cartoon memes, there are two cavemen, one on, you know, it's like two separate features on top and bottom, and they're digging through this mountain. And one guy, he's like 2 inches away from breaking through to the gold, and he's turning around walking out with his axe on his shoulder. And there's so many stories of that, of people that have come so close to success, but they, you know, I just take it that their heart wasn't in it enough that they could push through that. So anyway, it's kind of a little bit of a sidebar, but I think it's important just to stress that it's not what you see on TV or what you see in people's memes, that it's like you throw your shingle out and money's rolling in and you're buying yachts and you're successful. I mean, most of us, it's a grind every day. You have to get up, do the basics, and that's what makes us successful over time.
Right. Well, I've had 2 failed businesses in my past, which is part of the reason why I did start Market is I wanted to take those lessons learned and help others in the same position avoid those lessons, you know. After the 2 failed lessons, I went back to school and I got my degree. That was a 3-year process. I got 2 degrees during that 3 years. But where I'm going with this is why I had originally set up the MarketAtomy.Academy. It had always been my dream to take what I taught my, you know, what I mentored my small business solo entrepreneur accounts with, to take this online, because working with micro solo entrepreneurs, I knew they could not afford my consulting services. All right, my one-on-one. Even though I had those beforehand, there were a lot of them that just couldn't afford it. And so I wanted to take it online and make it at a price point that they would be able to afford without having to go back to college. And the onset of COVID threw me into this quicker than I had planned. I probably would have taken a lot longer to do this, but the timing was perfect for this. Because there's been an 83% increase in new business license applications since the beginning of COVID. You know, and when we've got, you know, anywhere from 70 to 75% of these small businesses failing within a 2 to 5 year period, right? They need the help. We here in the U.S. make it so easy for businesses to start a business. You know, you just go in there, you purchase your license, you get your incorporation papers if that's the route you're going, and you're in business. But we don't make it easy for those first stage businesses to survive.
And another part of that message, I think, too, is that we, as entrepreneurs, we feel that we have all the answers and that it might show weakness to reach out for help, or that we don't want anybody knowing our business. And I just, you know, I can't stress enough that seek help if you are struggling, because, you know, a lot of times people come so far and then, you know, they hit a wall that there's something that may be done to get over that. But, you know, we have to reach out. And that's another great thing about the online is, you know, maybe it's a little bit more anonymous for people to kind of get started and, you know, be able to learn some things without feeling like they're having to, you know, tell all the, you know, negative stories to somebody.
And that's one of the primary reasons for the Academy and the way that we structured the Academy. The value that we bring over the other educational platforms out there like Udemy, lynda.com, you know, a lot of those that are out there, is the fact that, first of all, we focus only on solo micro entrepreneurs, those small business owners. It doesn't mean larger ones can't send, you know, can't come in and take it. You know, it's a subscription-based platform. And all of the entire platform is focused on a 5 growth stage process. Okay. There's 5 growth phases that a company goes through, especially early stage. You've got the see it stage. That's your vision stage. That's where it's just a napkin idea, etc. Okay. Then you move into the prove it stage. You want to make sure that your product or service is a viable product or service, one that people are going to be willing to pay money for. and that is needed out there or wanted out there. And then you move into the build it stage. It's at this point that you take what you want to do and you start building the company, the business model around it. And this is also where you start getting your revenue. You start building your marketing strategy, everything. All right. Once you've got that built, now you're starting to see, okay, I want to grow my business. But first you have to fund it. That's the fourth phase.
Yeah.
You have to find out, are you going to self-fund this? Are you going to bring in angel investors? What are you going to do? And then finally, you move into the grow it stage. This is your 10x conversion stage. This is where you're going to grow your business and start working towards your exit strategy. All right. So the entire platform is built along those 5 phases. So every one of the courses offered fall within one or more of those phases. Okay. Purpose is we want to give them a sequencing aspect, because a lot of business owners are asking, what do I do first?
Right.
What do I do next? When do I do this?
Yeah.
And that's what we wanted to do, is to clarify this for them. The other thing that we do is every one of our courses that we offer range anywhere from free. The top one is $199. All right. So they're all, the bulk of them are between $25 and $65. So they're affordable. And then every course has got 2 components to it. One is the learning component, where they'll actually learn, if it's a cash flow, how to build a cash flow, you learn. And then you move into an integrated experiential learning component, whereas you will have the tools available for you to sit down and actually develop a cash flow or develop a strategy customized to your business. So it helps to keep that course from becoming shelf help.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that you're building that into your business right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing worse than, being a consultant type and, going out and working for somebody. And then when you come back years later and you see that awesome work you did sitting on somebody's shelf with a lot of dust on top of it,
They haven't
you had to knock
done
it
anything.
off.
Oh, and then the other thing to add to this, when you were talking about asking for help, included with all of our subscribers, we have a bi-weekly group coaching session,
nice.
as well as a private Facebook page and a bi-monthly mastermind program.
Okay.
So we are a firm believer in the fact that accountability is a huge aspect to growth.
Right.
You can get the learning, you can get the education and things like that, but you need that accountability to keep moving forward.
Yeah. Now, if somebody has a few employees, are these courses designed basically for that business owner, the one that's driving the decisions, or are some of it set up that maybe I've got my, right-hand administrator, I would like them to go through this as well?
They can do that as well. They can be a subscriber as well. Okay. In fact, I would recommend it, but I would also recommend that the owners at least go through the courses, because even if you're going to pass that on, that responsibility onto somebody else, you need to understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because it's up to you ultimately. You need to know what your numbers are. You need to understand how to read a balance sheet. You need to understand, how to develop a marketing strategy. You don't have to do it. You don't have to understand that much.
Yeah.
But be able to understand when it's explained to you, here's what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes even it's good, even if you're pretty far along, maybe it's good to step back, make sure we have this firm foundation.
Exactly.
And then, not necessarily do a relaunch, but be able to make sure we've put all the pieces together before we start moving much further down the line.
No, that's exactly it. We're here to provide all the resources that a solo or micro entrepreneur will need in order to grow their business. We hear all these stories about why these businesses are failing, the 70 to 75%.
Yeah.
It's because of lack of leadership. It's because of lack of funding, processes, all of that. But it's my belief that the real reason these businesses are failing is lack of education.
Yeah.
If they had that education, they'd be able to find the money. They'd be able to find the team that they need and build that team. Everything that is needed to be done, if you knew how to do it, you'd be able to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of times we just don't know where to turn for help. So, this is a great resource for people to turn to, get that education. And I guess even, I don't, would it, if I was thinking about being in business, if I was like, hey, I think I've got a good idea, but I'm really on that fence about whether to launch or jump in, would this be something that maybe could help me make this decision? Or I guess the sooner we start, the better, but would it be useful to somebody that maybe wasn't already started in business yet?
Well, and definitely this would be a resource for that, because in the very first two phases, which is the vision stage, okay, the see it stage, and the prove it stage, all right, as a subscriber, you're going through these group coaching sessions and the mastermind programs. You'll be able to get feedback from other members in there that will help you determine, okay, is this a viable prospect?
All right.
Is this a viable product or service? It's just another way. Operating in a vacuum when you're a small business owner is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got to be able to speak to other entrepreneurs, other leaders, things like that, in order to make credible decisions moving forward.
Yeah, and the great thing is that you've kind of formed a roundtable as well. That if I'm having this issue, there's probably somebody else in the group that has gone through this, and it may not be my answer, but at least you can get some input and some suggestions about what they have done to overcome it. And that's something we've talked about before, is forming these leadership roundtables. And the great thing is this is already a preformed when you don't have to go out and look for anybody. And so the other thing too, they're probably geographically dispersed, so we're not talking to our competitors, but it to me, it's very, very helpful to talk to others to say, hey, this is what I can't seem to overcome. And some of it's time. I mean, it's like if the world would stop for 5 minutes and you could research everything, but a lot of times we don't have, we just can't find the time, or the business pushes on, that this will make that part of that much simpler.
Right. Well, the other thing that we do offer through the Academy is a resource management section. Section. So as they're going through the growth process, say they needed a website developed or something like that, we have resource partners there that are listed in the website. All of them have been vetted by myself and my team to have programs that will work, that they can work with small micro businesses. It's not these developers or whatever that are going to charge you $40,000 for a website, and things like that, and which we don't recommend you doing in the first place. You start out small, especially solo and micro entrepreneurs. You start out small. You don't need a $40,000. You might pay $5,000 for a website. Or less.
No, that's good. That's good advice too, because sometimes we don't know who to turn to, and the first couple people we talk to want to give us a lot of things that may not be necessary in the beginning. Let's get this thing going. Let's make some money, and worry about the things that matter. Selling, make sure we have a good product or service. Make sure it's priced right. That's the other thing I think that we talked a little bit about, or you mentioned earlier, is the pricing. And I can't ever emphasize this enough, that we have to really look at pricing, because one of the very first people I worked with when I started consulting it was a friend, but he had a service that, one of the first things I asked was, so how did you arrive at this price? And he said, well, the guy down the street charges, $5 more. So we just said, so I said, well, let's take a look at this. What's your labor, your vehicle cost, your mileage, your gas, your oil, the building, what's all these things that go into making that up? And he was very surprised when we, put it down on paper because he was way undercharging. So,
Right.
there's so many different components like that that we just have to pay attention to, make
Right.
sure that we get everything. And so, again, instead of focusing on some of the bells and whistles and things that aren't important, it sounds like that this will
Yeah.
focus people on really what these core
Right.
KPIs that we need to worry about are.
Right. I mean, one of the courses that we offer through the academy is pricing strategy. Helping them develop that pricing strategy, whether
Right.
they're using a distributor or whether it's wholesale or retail or whatever. I
Yeah.
had I can give you a little story.
Uh,
I've got lots of little stories, but I had one company that manufactured. They were a manufacturer, and they were manufacturing out of China, and manufacturing a high-end women's sandal. It was a great product, beautiful product. It was patented, the whole bit. And they had come to me because they wanted me to help them put together a strategy, a go-to-market strategy, and things like that. And in the process, early on in the process of going through this strategy with them, come to find out there were 4 partners in the business, okay? And they were incorporated, and and 2 of the partners were non-performing partners. They weren't doing anything. They were just on the paperwork. And they wanted to go out for funding, and I said, "Do you have stock set aside for your, funding agents, for your angel investors or whatever?" And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "How is your stock divided right now?" And they said, "It's 25% among all 4 of us." And I said, "Well," I says, "until you can free up about 30% of that stock, you're not going to be able to bring in some of these investors because they're going to want to, have equity in the company if they're going to give you money." And one thing led to another, and it turned out that the non-performers were not willing to give up any stock, because that's what they tried doing,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But through working with them, what they did was they turned around and closed the company down, transferred the IP into another company, whereas it was just the 2 performing ones. So there are things that need to be understood when you're first starting out, so you don't make these mistakes and you don't run into these issues. And
Right.
that's what the academy is all about, is to teach you what you need to know in order to successfully grow.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of goes to a couple points of cleaning up your income statement, prior to, and I don't mean like the day or the week before, but you need to really be thinking about that prior to looking for funding. And then also, at that exit strategy is make sure we get that cleaned up so that you can maximize your value, when it comes time to do that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Danna, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on and talk to us. It's been very enlightening, and before we get away, I got a couple questions for you. First
Yep.
off, what is a tool or a habit, something that you use in your everyday life that really adds a lot of value, professional
Oh,
or personal?
goodness. Well, I have 2 tools that I use every day in my business. One is my Google Calendar.
Okay.
Okay, time management. My Google Calendar is color coded, everything.
Oh,
So I
nice.
can look at any day on my calendar and see what kind of day I'm going to have,
Yeah.
depending on what the colors are.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Yeah.
And then the other one that I use really often is my CRM,
Okay.
because I'm all about streamlining processes.
Yeah.
And so if there's something that I see I'm repeating on a regular basis, I will develop an automation for it.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are the tools that I use the most.
I'm glad you brought CRM up because that's another one of my kind of hot buttons is, especially starting out. To me, it's important to find one, and everybody doesn't like the same one. And I went through, 3 or 4 before I found the one I like and use. Find one, take the time, find one that suits you so you can keep notes, because it's difficult as your prospects and your marketing and your touches start growing. It's hard to keep up with all that on paper or in our heads. And then when we transfer that, I hate to get an email from somebody that I can tell they're new in the seat, but somebody had just reached out to me, a month or two before. And so it's not very professional. So anyway,
Right.
it's so good. And then from some of the sales agents, we always hear, well, the time it takes to do it, but believe me, it's minimal, and it helps us so much, knowing how to reach out, when to reach out, what kind of messaging we need to reach out with. They're invaluable. So find
Right.
one, and just find one is all I can say.
Yeah, no, definitely. I check it at night before I'm leaving work, so I know what I got to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then I check it in the morning to see, if I have to add something that might have come in overnight.
Right. All right. Well, tell us how can, who is this most suited for? The Market Autonomy. I'm having trouble with MarketAtomy.Academy. Who is it most suited for? How it can help them. Of course, how can they reach out and either get signed up for it or reach out to you?
MarketAtomy.Academy is going to be most suited for those individuals who are in the napkin stage. They're thinking about going into business, to understand the process of what's going to be involved. It could be for side hustlers who are looking to take their side hustle into a main hustle.
Yeah.
Okay. It's for those small micro solo entrepreneurs that are struggling and they don't understand where the problem is, right? Generally, it's businesses that are up to about maybe 500,000 in revenue, 10 employees or less.
Okay.
Is what we're looking at.
Great. And tell us one more time of the assessment, when you think it will be out, because I think that's an important tool for businesses that are already going to just help get an honest assessment of where you're at.
Right. Well, the assessment tool will begin beta testing the second week in August.
Okay.
And I am looking for beta testers. So if any of your listeners want to go through this at no cost to test it out with us, they can reach out to me and sign up through MarketAtomy, MarketAtomy.com/BHC-beta, BETA.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
I'll include that in the show notes as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. And so you can sign up through that, and we will follow up with you to let you know the details. Otherwise, you can reach me at Danna, DANNA.Olivo @MarketAtomy.com, or go to MarketAtomy.Academy.
Okay. Great. Well, again, Danna, thank you for your time. A lot of great information. Y'all go check it out. I know it can help you out a lot. Let's get some of these fundamentals down, see maybe what's holding us back so we can move forward and all be successful. That's what we want. There's enough out there in this abundant world that we can all be successful. It's not a zero-sum game. So let's get everybody out there and make everybody successful. I love that. All right, y'all, that's going to do it for another episode of the Business of Business podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Roy. You can find us at www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We're on all the major podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, please reach out. I'd be glad to add you. We're on all the social media platforms as well. Probably hang out a little bit more on Instagram, and a video of this interview will go up when it goes live on YouTube as well. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your business.